I should have known something was wrong the moment my suitcase felt lighter than my heart. That Thursday morning had begun like any other pre-vacation day. Quiet, hopeful, humming with the energy of a trip I had spent months planning. In my bedroom, sunlight spilled in through the blinds, landing right across the open suitcase on my bed. Inside it were the shirts I had ironed the night before, neatly stacked in the color order I preferred. Whites, blues, and the pale green one my daughter Celeste always said suited my complexion. The air smelled faintly of the cedar blocks I kept in my closet, and I found myself smiling as I picked up the soft navy polo I planned to wear on our first night in Rome. I imagined the exact moment I'd step into the cafe near the Vatican, the one Celeste had bookmarked during our planning sessions, where the waiter supposedly remembered every regular by name. Everything about this trip felt like a small, overdue gift to myself. The passports were already laid out on my nightstand. Our flight information was printed and clipped together with a red binder clip so nothing would get lost. The weather forecast promised clear skies in Italy for the entire week, perfect for the walking tours I had highlighted in yellow. I was humming an old Dean Martin tune under my breath while debating whether to pack my newer leather shoes or the older, well-broken-in pair. The kind of simple decision that only comes up when life feels uncomplicated. Then my phone buzzed. I ignored it at first, probably a reminder from the airline app or an alert about gate updates. But it buzzed again, and again. 3 messages in a row, all from Celeste. Still holding my shirt, I reached for the phone, thumb hovering over the screen while my mind raced through possibilities. Did she forget her passport? Did the car rental get messed up? Did her husband Darian change his mind about taking the earlier flight? The answer hit me harder than jet lag ever could. Dad, you won't be coming with us. Darian wants this to be just a family trip. My hands went cold instantly. I blinked once, twice, 3 full times as if the letters might rearrange themselves into something less brutal. But the words stayed the same. Detached. Final. Delivered like a shipping notice. Just a family trip. For a few seconds, all I could do was stare at the message while every plan I had made, the reservations, the printed itineraries, the tickets I had purchased, began to unravel inside my mind like a fraying rope. My stomach tightened. My throat felt thick. I slowly sat on the edge of my bed, the mattress dipping under my weight while the half-packed suitcase leaned against me like a witness. I typed the only word I could manage. Okay. Not because I was okay, but because shock has a way of shrinking language down to a single, helpless syllable. The room suddenly felt colder. The excitement I had felt an hour earlier disappeared like it had never existed. I looked around. The guidebooks arranged carefully on my dresser, the travel bottles lined up like little soldiers, the new camera still in its unopened box, and every single item felt like part of a cruel joke someone else had written. I closed my suitcase slowly, the metal clasps snapping shut with a hollow finality that echoed through the room. Then, with a heaviness I couldn't hide even from myself, I dialed the airline to cancel my ticket. The customer service agent sounded genuinely sympathetic. I wished she hadn't. When I hung up, the house felt unbearably quiet. Even the ticking clock on my hallway wall seemed louder than usual. I wandered into the living room, picking up a glossy brochure on Roman architecture I had left on the coffee table. The cover displayed the Pantheon against a golden sky. Just hours earlier, that picture had made me feel hopeful. Now it felt like a taunt. I put the brochure aside and turned on the TV for background noise, but nothing drowned out the silence settling into my chest. At some point, I opened Facebook out of habit, not desire. Most of it was the usual noise. Pictures of cats. Recipes no one ever actually tries. Political rants I never read. Then I saw it. A photo posted by Darian's parents. The 4 of them, Celeste, Darian, his mother and father, smiling proudly in front of the Colosseum. For people. Not 5. The caption read, "First day of our family adventure." My body went still. Completely still. I clicked on Celeste's profile. More photos. All recent. All time-stamped within hours. There they were, sitting at an outdoor cafe near the Trevi Fountain, wine glasses glinting in the sun. Celeste had written beneath it, "So grateful for precious family time." Family. The word felt sharp enough to cut. My thumb hovered over the screen, trembling. I counted their faces again, 1, 2, 3, 4. And every time I reached the fourth, the space where I should have been felt like a missing tooth. I set the phone down gently, almost afraid to crack the glass, and walked toward the kitchen window. Through the reflection, I saw my own face. Older, tired, lined with disappointment. Behind that reflection, the photo on my phone still glowed. For people. For smiles. No room for me. My chest tightened with something I didn't want to name yet. By the time night fell, I was restless, pacing, picking up my phone every few minutes with no purpose except the faint instinct that someone, anyone, might call to apologize. No one did. Morning light came sluggishly through the curtains the next day. I barely slept. My coffee tasted bitter. Still, I dialed Celeste. She answered cheerfully, laughter and street noise filling the background. Rome sounded alive. My house sounded dead. What followed wasn't a conversation. It was a dissection. She told me Darian didn't want me there, that I made things too complicated, that they didn't need me hovering over their vacation. And then, like a knife slipped in casually, she said, "Dad, you need too much attention." The world went quiet. Even the refrigerator hum stopped mattering. Something inside me, something patient and generous, gave way. By the time I hung up, I knew nothing would be the same again. But I also knew this wasn't the end of the story. Not by a long shot. Sleep didn't come to me that night. Not even for a moment. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw the same frozen image. Celeste smiling in that Roman cafe, her wine glass lifted, her face glowing with the joy of a trip I had planned, without me. By morning, I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is sharp and loud. This felt different. Heavier. Quieter. It was the kind of heaviness that sinks deep, the kind you don't realize you're carrying until you feel your knees start to buckle. I made coffee just to keep my hands busy, though the mug trembled slightly as I lifted it. My kitchen looked the same as it always had. The wooden table, the neatly arranged spice rack, the newspaper folded where I'd left it. But the room felt changed, as if betrayal had seeped into the walls overnight. I was going through possible explanations again. Ridiculous excuses, desperate justifications, when my phone vibrated once more. A notification banner slid across the screen. Alert! A charge of $892 was made on your card. Location: Rome, Italy. My stomach dropped. I blinked, thinking maybe it was a delayed charge from some past purchase. But when I opened the banking app, reality stared back in bold, unforgiving letters. Il Convivio Restaurant, $892. Approved. I recognized the name instantly. It was one of the Michelin-starred places I'd suggested as a maybe someday, if we can afford it, splurge. The exact restaurant Celeste had circled in our planning booklet with a hopeful smile. The same restaurant I wasn't invited to. I rubbed my forehead slowly, letting the information settle into place. My daughter, who had texted me that I didn't belong on their family vacation, had used my emergency backup credit card to treat everyone else to an expensive lunch. I scrolled further. Hotel Venezia, $514.20 Roma Boutique, $293 historical tour tickets, $198.60. My breath caught short and rough. Every charge was hers. Every charge had posted after they'd arrived. Every charge was on a card I had only kept active for one reason: to help her build credit years ago, back when she was fresh out of college and I believed supporting her was the same as loving her. My fingers tightened around the phone. No wonder Darian's parents paid their own way. They had me. I stood up abruptly, needing space, air, anything to keep from drowning in the rising tide of realization. I paced to my home office, the room covered floor to ceiling in framed pictures of Celeste and our life together. Birthdays, graduations, her wedding, Christmases, moments I thought were real, moments I now realized might have been illusions. I saw a photo of me lifting her onto my shoulders when she was 5, both of us laughing under the summer sun. My throat tightened painfully. How long had this shift been happening? When did I stop being her father and start being her walking ATM? A second alert pinged. Then a third. I watched them pop up in real time. Elegant style gifts, $127 Lou Roma fashions, $342.90 taxi Roma, $61. She was using my card freely, boldly, comfortably, while telling me I was too much to handle. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Not dramatically, not angrily, just cleanly, like a rope that had frayed for years and finally split. I went straight to the Manage Cards section of the banking app and found her name listed under Authorized Users. My thumb hovered over the Remove Access button. I remembered her voice from the day before, icy and dismissive. The laugh in the background from Darian. The word, needy. The phrase, just a family trip. My thumb stopped trembling. I pressed Remove User. A confirmation screen popped up. Are you sure? This action cannot be undone. I hit yes without hesitation. My phone made a soft chiming sound. Her access was gone. Every card linked to her name was instantly deactivated. I exhaled slowly, longer than I meant to. It felt like exhaling years of pent-up disappointment. For the first time in days, my breathing sounded like my own. I set the phone down, walked to the kitchen, and refilled my coffee. When I took the first sip, it tasted different. Cleaner, stronger, like the first sip after a long illness. Around 9 a.m., my phone rang. International number. Italy. I didn't rush to answer. Not this time. Morning, Celeste, I said, as calm as still water. Her voice came out sharp and panicked. Dad, what did you do to the card? I just tried to pay for lunch and it declined. In front of Darian's parents. I took another sip of coffee. That must have been embarrassing. Embarrassing? Embarrassing? She screeched. Fix it. Now. For what? I asked. I thought you didn't need me tagging along. I assumed you didn't want me financially tagging along either. That's different. She snapped. We needed that card. What for? I asked. Emergency backup, right? What emergency was a $300 shopping spree? There was a long silence. Then a muffled conversation behind her, Darian's voice. When she came back, her tone had changed. Cold. Calculating. Dad. If you don't fix the card, we'll have to take action when we get home. Action? We've discussed it, she said tightly. You're older and clearly not managing things well. We're going to look into care facilities and sell your house to pay for it. My heart didn't drop this time. It hardened. Is that so? Yes, she said. It's for your own good. I let the silence stretch. Let her think she'd said something reasonable. Let her hang herself with her own words. Finally, I answered, No. What do you mean, no? I mean, no, Celeste. You've said enough. And I hung up. Just like that. No shaking hands this time. No racing heartbeat. Just clarity. I set the phone down gently and looked out my kitchen window at the yard I'd maintained for nearly 3 decades. The yard she assumed she could sell out from under me. A thin, quiet determination settled over me like a snowfall. If she wanted to play power games, she had no idea who she was dealing with. Because I still had one thing she knew nothing about. Ownership. Real ownership. And she was about to learn exactly what that meant. I stayed seated for a long time after hanging up on Celeste, staring into the steam rising from my coffee. It curled upward in soft, patient trails, almost peaceful compared to the storm gathering in my chest. The threat she had delivered so casually spun in circles in my mind. Care facility. Sell my home. For my own good. The cruelty wasn't even the worst part. It was the entitlement. I had spent a lifetime believing my generosity was appreciated. Turns out it was expected. I stood up slowly, the chair scraping the floor behind me. I walked to my home office, my quiet haven, the one room in the house untouched by anyone else's needs or chaos. The moment I stepped inside, the framed family photos on the walls looked different than they had the day before. Less like memories, more like evidence. Evidence of a long pattern I had been too blind to see. I approached the filing cabinet against the right-hand wall. The metal drawer slid open with a familiar clunk. Inside were neatly organized folders labeled in my handwriting. Taxes, medical, utilities, vehicles, property. My hand hovered before pulling out the folder that mattered now. Property. Inside it were 2 sets of documents. My own home deed, clean, simple, undeniably mine. And the deed to the house on Oak Avenue. The house I bought for Celeste and Darian 3 years ago. The house they believed was theirs. The house they lived in like royalty. The house they assumed they would someday inherit and use to fund my forced move into a care facility. I set the documents on my desk and leaned over them, running my finger over the embossed county seal. There it was, plain as daylight. My name. Only my name. They had never followed through on transferring the deed. Not because they forgot, but because they were too comfortable assuming I'd never do anything without checking with them first. A soft, humorless laugh escaped my throat. "Oh, Celeste," I muttered. "You should have checked the paperwork." For a moment, I expected guilt to rise inside me. Some instinctive, fatherly hesitation. But nothing came. The place where guilt should have lived felt hollow now. Emptied out by their words, their choices, their betrayal. Instead, a quiet certainty settled in. If I didn't take back control now, I never would. I picked up the business card pinned under a small ceramic paperweight on my desk. Kai Nakamura, real estate agent. He had helped me buy both properties. A good man. Trustworthy. Efficient. I grabbed my keys and left the house. The drive to Kai's office took less than 20 minutes, but it felt like crossing a threshold. Stepping from the life I'd lived for decades into something entirely different. Kai's office was located inside a refurbished Victorian building with ivy growing up one side. The bell above the door jingled as I entered. Kai looked up from his computer and smiled warmly. "Fletcher, haven't seen you in months. How's retired life treating you?" "About to get interesting," I said. He raised a curious eyebrow. "What can I help you with?" "I need to sell the Oak Avenue house." His smile softened, turning into concern. "The one your daughter lives in? Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," I said. "I just need it sold." Kai hesitated only a second. He'd been in the real estate business long enough to recognize when not to press for details. He pulled up the property file on his computer. "Good news, the market's hot. Houses in that neighborhood are going above asking price." I sat down across from him while he typed. "What are you thinking for timeline?" he asked. "As soon as possible." He nodded thoughtfully. "We can price it to move quickly. I'll need to get photos, do a walkthrough, arrange the listing documents. Are the occupants available for coordination?" "They're not home," I said simply. "I have the keys." Kai paused. "All right then. Should be straightforward." He started printing the paperwork. The sound of the printer whirred through the quiet room. While he laid out the forms, I couldn't help glancing around the office. Photos of families shaking hands with Kai, holding new house keys, standing in front of sold signs. People beginning new chapters. I hadn't realized until this moment that I was beginning one too. Kai handed me the listing agreement. "Sign here, here, and here." My pen moved with steady, deliberate strokes. When I looked up, Kai gave a small approving nod. "I'll get to work right away. In this market, you might get an offer within hours." Hours. Not days. Not weeks. Hours. The thought left me lighter than I expected. When I stepped back outside, sunlight warmed my face. The breeze felt different too, as though it came with permission. Permission to finally choose myself. On the drive home, I passed a park where a young couple was pushing their toddler on a swing. Their laughter floated through the air, bright and uncomplicated. I remembered when Celeste used to run to me with the same wide grin, tiny hands reaching up for one more push. I had given her everything I could back then. I had given her everything for years, and still, somehow, she believed I was the burden. When I parked in my driveway, my phone buzzed with a new email notification. Property listing confirmed, Oak Avenue. I opened the message. There it was, photos scheduled, listing live, potential buyers already notified. It had begun, not out of revenge, not out of spite, but out of survival. I stood in my kitchen, looking around the home I'd built with my own hands years ago, realizing I had protected everyone but myself. Until now, the silence in the house felt different. No longer hollow, but expectant. Like something long dormant had finally stretched awake inside me. And I knew, without question, that when Celeste returned from Italy, nothing in her world would look the same. The next morning, I woke before my alarm. Something that hadn't happened in years. Maybe it was adrenaline. Maybe it was clarity. Or maybe it was the strange sense of freedom that comes after finally choosing yourself over people who took you for granted. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, listening to the slow gurgle of the machine like a steady drumbeat. The air still felt charged from yesterday's decisions. The house seemed quieter, but not the empty kind of quiet I'd felt the day Celeste left. This quiet felt purposeful, focused. I had barely taken 2 sips of coffee when my phone rang. Kai Nakamura. I answered immediately. "Morning, Kai." "Fletcher," he said, sounding slightly breathless. "You're not going to believe this." I sat up straighter. "Try me. We have an offer. A serious one." I blinked. "Already? I told you the market was hot," he said, a smile evident in his voice. "But this is faster than even I expected." There's a young couple, Caspian and Nora Mercer. They moved here recently and have been searching for the right neighborhood. "Cash buyers?" I asked. "Yes, full cash offer." "And Fletcher?" His voice warmed. "They offered over asking." I exhaled slowly through my nose. "Over asking. Cash. No delays. What do they want for closing?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "They'd like to close immediately. As in tomorrow or the day after, if we can get the paperwork lined up." I leaned back in my chair, letting the information sink in. Tomorrow. Before Celeste even stepped foot back from Italy. Before they had a chance to realize what had been set in motion. Before they could try manipulating their way out of consequences. Kai hesitated, then asked, "Is that timing okay with you?" I felt a small, surprising smile tug at the corner of my mouth. "It's perfect." Kai chuckled. "All right then. I'll schedule the title company. You'll need to come in to sign everything." We ironed out the details. By the time I hung up, the coffee in my mug had gone lukewarm, but somehow it tasted sweeter than before. My mind moved with clarity and purpose. The pieces were falling into place faster than I'd expected, but I felt ready for each one. Still, there was more work to do. Celeste and Darian's belongings filled the Oak Avenue house. Items I had bought, items they had bought, items they assumed they'd always have access to. The buyers wanted a clean property, not a storage room full of personal leftovers. I needed the house empty before closing. I opened my laptop and typed, "Moving companies near me." Dozens of results popped up, but I scrolled past the big corporate chains. I didn't want a faceless service. I wanted reliability, straight answers, no nonsense. A listing caught my eye. Brent's Reliable Moving. Family-owned for 12 years. Fair rates. Excellent reviews. Perfect. I dialed the number, expecting voicemail, but instead a gravelly voice answered immediately. "Brent speaking. Direct. Efficient. Exactly what I needed." "Brent, I have a situation," I said. "I need to move the entire contents of a house into storage. Soon." "How soon?" he asked. "Tomorrow morning." He didn't even hesitate. "We can make it happen. Need the address. And do you already have a storage unit?" "Not yet." "All right. I'll patch in someone I know." Before I could respond, a third line clicked on. "This is Iris at Safekeep Storage. How can I help?" Fast. Smooth. A well-oiled machine. Brent guided the conversation like a seasoned captain steering the ship. "For a whole house, he'll need at least a 10 by 20, Brent said. "Iris. Availability looks good," Iris replied. "First month up front. 135. "I'll take it," I said. Within minutes, everything was arranged. Storage unit secured. Movers booked. Brent's voice shifted as he wrapped up the call. "We'll be there at 8:15 a.m. sharp," he said. "You want everything cleared out before the occupants come back, right?" Yes. He grunted knowingly. Family trouble? I didn't answer directly. Something like that. He didn't push. We'll handle it. Respectfully and fast. The call ended. I stood for a moment, letting the quiet settle. My heart beat steady, not rushed or frantic. The path ahead was clear, and I was following it without second-guessing myself. I made a simple dinner, washed the dishes, and set out an old pair of jeans and boots for the morning. The same clothes I wore back when I worked construction, before I became a man who always put others first. I slept better that night than I had in months. Morning arrived crisp and cool. I reached the Oak Avenue house at 7:45 a.m., coffee in hand. The street was quiet, lined with identical mailboxes and neat lawns. The kind of neighborhood that looks perfect from the outside. Brent's truck was already there, engine idling, steam rising faintly into the morning air. He stepped out when he saw me. "Morning, Mr. Brennan." The two younger movers, Kyle and Marcus, hopped out of the back, stretching and shaking off the early chill. "Let's take a look," Brent said, clipboard ready. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The silence hit me first. Without Celeste's voice bouncing between rooms or Darian's television blaring, the house felt hollow, stripped of warmth, stripped of meaning, stripped of the illusion that it had ever been a home built on mutual respect. "This everything?" Brent asked, sweeping his gaze around. "All theirs," I said. "Every last piece." Brent nodded. "We'll get to work." I tried to help despite his warnings about insurance. Eventually, he gave up arguing and handed me a box labeled books. We worked in steady rhythm. Box after box, room after room. Kyle wrapped the kitchenware. Marcus disassembled the bed frames. Brent maneuvered the big sectional sofa through the doorway like he'd done it 1,000 times. I found a wedding album in their bedroom closet, one I had paid a photographer handsomely to create. As I flipped through it, I realized something I had missed on their wedding day. I barely appeared in the photos. Darian's parents were in almost every shot, front and center, laughing, beaming. I appeared twice, blurred in the background, cut off at the edge. I closed the album slowly. "This one goes?" Brent asked. "Yes," I said, handing it to him. "All of it goes." By 11:45 a.m., the house was empty, completely empty. The walls echoed faintly when we spoke. Sunlight fell across the bare floors in rectangles, unbroken by furniture or clutter. It didn't feel like Celeste's house anymore. It felt like a property, and it felt ready for new owners. At the storage facility, I watched Brent's team unload the boxes into Unit 52C. Everything fit neatly, organized, secure. I paid Brent, adding a generous tip. "Hope things turn out in your favor," he said quietly. "They already are," I replied. When I arrived home, my phone buzzed. Facebook. 13 unread notifications. I opened the app. Celeste had already begun posting vague, dramatic statuses. "Some people have no loyalty. Family always betrays you first. I guess I know where I stand now." Her friends commented with sympathy. She played victim convincingly. I didn't respond, because something far more important awaited me. My phone rang. Kai again. "Fletcher," he said excitedly. "The buyers want to jump on this immediately. Can you come in tomorrow morning to finalize everything?" A slow, satisfied breath left me. "Yes," I said. "I'll be there." The final step was set in motion, clean, legal, irreversible. And Celeste still had no idea. Friday morning arrived with a crispness in the air that felt almost ceremonial. I dressed in clean jeans, a pressed shirt, and my old boots. The same pair I used to wear when I worked jobs that demanded strength, precision, and decisions that stuck. This day required all three. By the time I walked into the title office, my mind felt clear, my steps steady. Kai greeted me with his characteristic warm professionalism. "Fletcher, perfect timing. Everything is ready." He ushered me into a conference room where a stack of documents waited neatly on the polished table. The title officer ran through each page. Disclosure forms, deed transfers, acknowledgement certificates, And the final closing statement. This is the official transfer of ownership, the officer said, tapping the top document. Once you sign this, the property no longer belongs to you. I reached for the pen. Strangely, I didn't feel loss. I felt release. My name moved across the paperwork in slow, deliberate strokes. When I finished the last signature, the officer smiled. Congratulations. The sale is official. Kai added, the funds should hit your account within a couple of hours. When I stepped outside into the sunlight, my phone vibrated with a notification. Deposit received, $192,000. After fees and commissions, I stood still for a moment, breathing, absorbing the finality. The house I had bought for Celeste and Darian, the house meant to support their new life, was now legally, irrevocably someone else's. A house meant to be a blessing had turned into a weapon they tried to use against me. Now it was gone from their grasp. I drove home, parked in my driveway, and sat for a long minute reflecting on how much had changed in just 2 days. Then I did something I hadn't done since retiring. I took a long, slow breath that felt like the first one in years. Saturday dawned bright and vibrant. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee, showered, shaved, and put on a clean jacket. Something inside me said this day would require composure. Around noon, I decided to drive by the Oak Avenue property one last time. Not out of nostalgia, but out of closure. As I turned onto the street, I saw a large U-Haul parked in the driveway. Caspian and Nora were already busy unloading furniture. A baby's crib leaned against the truck's side. A new life beginning in a place that had suffocated me for years. Nora knelt in the garden, planting small, violet flowers in the soil. Caspian carried a wooden swing frame toward the backyard. The sight warmed something in me. Not envy, not longing, but peace. This house finally belonged to people who wanted to build something real. I parked across the street and sat quietly, letting the view sink in. Then my phone rang. An international number. They were back. I answered. Hello, Dad, Celeste hissed. Her voice was sharp, frazzled, irritated. We just landed. There's no signal in the taxi. What is going on? Why did the card? She stopped suddenly. I knew why. Because the taxi had just turned onto Oak Avenue. And she could see it. The U-Haul, the strangers, the moving boxes, the open front door, the new owners walking in and out. For a moment, the line went eerily silent. I could hear only her breathing, fast, uneven, almost panicked. What is happening? Before I could answer, I saw the taxi stop in front of the driveway. The back door swung open, and Celeste stepped out, still wearing her travel dress, her sunglasses pushed up onto her head. Darian followed, pulling out their luggage with confusion stamped across his face. Celeste stared at the house as if reality itself had malfunctioned. Excuse me, Darian called out, his voice rising aggressively as he approached Nora. What do you think you're doing in our home? Nora looked up from her flowers, surprised but polite. Your home? I'm sorry, there must be a misunderstanding. We bought this house. Caspian appeared in the doorway holding a folder. The deed is right here. Paperwork's all finalized. Darian grabbed the papers so fast he nearly ripped them. His eyes darted over the words. What is this? He shouted. This is our address. Our property. I stepped out of my car then. My steps steady. My shoulders squared. My heart strangely calm. Celeste saw me and her expression twisted. Confusion melting into dread, then rapidly sharpening into rage. Dad! She snapped, storming toward me. What did you do? What the hell did you do? I met her fury with stillness. The house was mine, I said softly. Legally, fully, completely mine. No, that's impossible, she shouted. Darian, we live here. Lived? I corrected. Darian stormed toward me now, face red, chest puffed. He jabbed a finger toward the house. You sold our home? Without telling us? Without permission? I held his gaze. I don't need your permission to sell my own property. This is illegal, he yelled. We're going to sue you. We'll take everything you have. With what money? I asked quietly. He flinched. Everyone knew the answer. Nora and Caspian exchanged uncomfortable glances and quietly stepped away toward the front door, giving us space. Celeste's voice cracked, no longer angry, but desperate. Dad, where are we supposed to go? Where did you put all our things? I reached into my jacket and pulled out an envelope. She snatched it out of my hand with trembling fingers. Inside was the printed receipt. Safekeep storage, Unit 52C address. Code. Paid in full for the first month. She stared at it like it was written in a foreign language. You put our entire life in storage? I preserved everything carefully, I said. Nothing was damaged. Darian crumpled the paper in his fist. You're insane. No, I replied, stepping closer. I'm simply done. Celeste opened her mouth as if to argue, but the words never formed. Behind her, the new owners stepped into their house. Laughing, hopeful, excited for the life ahead of them. The life Celeste had thrown away through greed and entitlement. I stepped back toward my car. As I opened the door, Darian shouted after me. This isn't over, old man. I glanced over my shoulder. It is, I said. For you, it absolutely is. I slid into my seat, turned the key, and drove away as their shouts faded behind me. 3 months passed before I heard from them again. Through a man in a suit who knocked on my door. Process server. They had sued. I accepted the envelope, thanked him politely, and closed the door. That same afternoon, the judge dismissed their case outright. They were ordered to pay their own attorney fees, tens of thousands of dollars. And just like that, the legal door slammed shut. Forever. But my story didn't end there. Because something unexpected, something alive, entered my life shortly after. And changed everything. After the lawsuit was dismissed, the air around my home felt different. Lighter, almost breathable again. For months, tension had clung to the walls like dust, settling into every corner of my routines. That afternoon, when the judge's final decision flashed across my screen, something inside me quietly unlocked, like a door I didn't realize had been bolted shut. I made myself a simple lunch, grilled cheese and tomato soup, and ate it at the kitchen table with a peace that felt almost unfamiliar. Celeste and Darian were now fully responsible for their own attorney fees, expenses, and lives. They could no longer use me as a financial crutch. No more guilt. No more manipulation. No more whispered threats about care facilities. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly alone. But not lonely. Not yet. That feeling came later in the evening, when the house fell silent. The kind of quiet that used to comfort me now echoed differently. Like a reminder of all the years I had filled this home with other people's priorities, other people's emergencies, other people's expectations. I stood by the hallway mirror, studying my reflection. I looked older than I remembered. More lines around the eyes, gray streaking through my beard, shoulders a little less squared. But there was something else too, something steadier, resilience. A man learning how to belong to himself again. Still, when night settled in and I turned off the living room lamp, the silence pressed closer. Heavy, persistent. I realized then that yes, victory brought relief, but it also brought emptiness. The next morning, I decided to fill that empty space. The local pet store sat near the edge of town, wedged between a hardware shop and a bakery that always smelled of cinnamon. I had passed it dozens of times but never gone inside. Pets, I told myself, were responsibilities. Work, mess. And with Celeste needing me constantly, I had always convinced myself I didn't have time. Funny how quickly time becomes abundant when you're no longer being drained by other people. A bell jingled softly as I opened the door. The scent of wood shavings, hay, and puppy shampoo mingled pleasantly. Rows of aquariums bubbled quietly. A wall of colorful leashes hung in neat loops. A young woman in a green apron smiled warmly from behind the register. Good morning. Looking for anything in particular? No, I said truthfully. Just browsing. Let me know if you need help. I wandered slowly past the small animals. hamsters spinning in wheels, rabbits cleaning their faces with soft paws. Then I turned toward the dog section. That's when I saw him. A golden retriever, 3 years old, according to the card clipped to his kennel, sitting with his head tilted slightly, studying me as if I were the one on display. His fur was a deeper gold than most retrievers, almost caramel, and his eyes warm, gentle, curious. He didn't bark. He didn't jump. He didn't whine. He simply watched me, tail wagging slowly, as though he'd been waiting. The young woman approached. "That's Ranger," she said. "He's been here a couple of weeks." "Ranger," I repeated softly. "He belonged to a military family," she continued. "They were relocated overseas. They loved him a lot but couldn't take him with them." I crouched carefully, my knees protesting a little. Ranger stood up, padded to the kennel door, and pressed his nose to the bars. I lifted my hand. He licked my fingers through the metal. That simple touch surprised me more than I expected. A strange swell of emotion hit my chest, warm, unsteady, almost vulnerable. "Would you like to meet him properly?" she asked gently. I nodded. She opened the kennel, clipped a leash onto his collar, and led him into a small play area. Ranger moved toward me with the calm confidence of a dog who understood people deeply. He nudged my thigh, leaned his weight against my leg, and then looked up at me with eyes that said, "I'm yours if you want me." I knelt beside him and ran my hand along his back. His fur was soft, warm. The young woman smiled. "He's a sweetheart, loves car rides, likes staying close to his person." "His person?" I murmured, scratching behind his ear. His tail thumped. There was room in my life for this dog. More than room, there was space that needed him. "How much paperwork do you need from me?" I asked. "Just your ID and a signature." She handed me the adoption forms. I filled them out with steady hands, feeling something loosen inside me with every line I signed. 30 minutes later, Ranger trotted beside me through the parking lot, his new blue leash in my hand. He hopped into the passenger seat without hesitation, circled twice, and settled with a sigh that sounded like contentment. "You ready to head home?" I asked. He lifted his head, licked my hand once, and placed his paw gently on my thigh. I smiled, a full, real smile that reached my eyes. We drove toward Cedar Falls with the windows cracked open and the breeze rolling through the car. Ranger stuck his head slightly out the window, letting the wind ruffle his fur. The sight made something warm bloom in my chest. At home, Ranger explored cautiously at first, sniffing the entryway, pacing the kitchen, inspecting the living room. When he reached my bedroom, he paused, turned back, and looked at me. Another silent question. "It's all yours," I said. That night, he curled up on the floor beside my bed, close enough that I could hear his steady breathing. The room didn't feel empty anymore, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I slept the whole night through. Over the next few days, life shifted quietly. Ranger followed me everywhere, room to room, step by step, as if guarding the quiet parts of my life I'd forgotten how to protect. He greeted neighbors with polite tail wags, sat beside me during breakfast, and nudged my arm whenever I sank too deep into thought. The house didn't feel like a reminder anymore. Felt like a beginning. One evening, while Ranger slept with his chin resting on my foot, I opened my laptop and typed, "Best RVs for senior travel with dogs." It was time to see the world I had put on hold for too long. I clicked on a link for a 28-foot Airstream, sleek, compact, perfect for one man and his loyal dog. The idea unfolded in my mind like a map I had been meant to follow all along. National parks, scenic highways, new towns, open roads. Freedom. I turned toward Ranger. "What do you think? Ready for an adventure?" His tail thumped once, then twice. Then he stood up and placed his paw on my knee, as if he already knew the answer. Buying the RV felt like rewriting the last chapter of my life. A new beginning, crafted with my own hands instead of handed to me through someone else's expectations. The Airstream dealership sat just outside Cedar Falls, a long silver building that gleamed under the afternoon sun. Ranger trotted beside me, tail swishing like he already knew something exciting was about to happen. Inside, the sales staff greeted me with wide smiles, offering coffee, brochures, and more enthusiasm than I was used to. But the moment I stepped into the 28-foot Airstream Classic, I understood why. It wasn't just a vehicle. It was possibility. Polished wood floors, a compact kitchenette, a queen-sized bed, a small but comfortable sitting area perfect for evenings with a dog curled at my feet. This one's a favorite of solo travelers, the salesman said, patting a chrome handle. Plenty of room for one and a furry companion. Ranger sniffed the interior, then sat proudly in the front seat as if declaring the RV officially his. I ran my hand along the countertop, imagining mornings parked beside mountain ranges, evenings by quiet lakes, nights under skies filled with stars I'd never taken the time to look at before. "I'll take it," I said. The salesman blinked. "You mean, you'd like to place a deposit?" "No," I said, smiling. "I mean, I'll take it." He scrambled for the paperwork while Ranger leaned against my leg, warm and steady. 2 hours later, I drove out of the dealership towing a brand new chapter behind me. Over the next week, my life fell into a peaceful rhythm as I prepared for the road. Ranger and I walked twice a day, early mornings around the neighborhood, evenings under the soft glow of streetlights. I sorted through camping gear, stocked the RV's small pantry, organized my tools, filled water tanks, and checked tire pressure 3 times just to be safe. But as my excitement grew, so did something else. Whispers. Small fragments of conversation I overheard at the grocery store or in line at the post office. "Did you hear about Celeste and Darian? Lost their house. Some people think Fletcher was too harsh." "No, I heard he had every right. They've been telling everyone he tricked them." I tried to ignore it. Cedar Falls was a small town. Gossip traveled faster than the speed limit. But everything came crashing together when I stopped at the local diner for lunch. I slid into a booth with Ranger curled under the table, always well-behaved. The waitress, Linda, who I'd known for years, set down my coffee and hesitated before speaking. "Just a heads up, Fletcher," she said softly. "They're here." "Who?" She tilted her chin toward the far corner. "Celeste and Darian." They sat with 2 of their friends, talking intensely. Celeste looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, shoulders tense, voice sharp. Darian looked even worse. Unshaven, red-faced, tapping his foot aggressively under the table. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I didn't feel anger. I felt distance, a healthy kind. Their choices had brought them here, not mine. I focused on the menu, ordering a turkey sandwich and fries. But I could feel their eyes flicking toward me every few minutes. I kept my gaze on my food, refusing to invite a confrontation. Ranger sensed the tension. His ears twitched, but he stayed pressed against my leg, quietly alert. The moment I stood to leave, I heard it. Celeste's voice, cold, brittle. "Dad, wait." I closed my eyes briefly, then turned. She approached slowly, jaw tight, hands trembling with fury. She was trying to disguise as sadness. "We need to talk," she said, louder than necessary. Several customers glanced over. I kept my tone neutral. "About what?" "You know what," she said. "You made us homeless. You made us a laughingstock in this town. You made your choices," I replied. "You excluded me, insulted me, took advantage of me, and expected endless forgiveness. Actions have consequences." Celeste. Her eyes filled with tears, real or performative, I couldn't tell. "You could have talked to us," she said. "You didn't have to humiliate us." "I didn't humiliate you. You humiliated yourselves on Facebook before I even reacted." Darian stood then, stepping beside her, puffing up like a rooster ready for a fight. "You destroyed our life," he said. "We lost everything. We have nowhere to go." "That's not true," I said calmly. "You have storage. You have your things. You're adults. You can rebuild." He scoffed. "Easy for you to say. You kept your house." I met his glare. "Yes, because I earned it. Because I paid for it. Because it's mine." Celeste's voice rose to a near scream. We were your family. Ranger tensed, ears back. But I didn't react emotionally. I'd done that for too many years. I just looked at her. And this time, I let her see how deeply she'd changed. You were my family, I said softly. But you stopped treating me like yours. The diner had gone silent. Even the cooks paused behind the counter. Darian took a step closer. You better fix this, old man. You better. Ranger growled. A low, warning rumble. Darian froze. That's enough, I said, placing my hand gently on Ranger's head. We're leaving. Celeste's voice cracked behind me. Dad, please. But I didn't turn back. I walked outside into the sunlight with Ranger by my side, breathing deeply as the door swung shut behind us. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilt, or fear, or uncertainty. I felt free. But that freedom wouldn't last uninterrupted. Because the very next day, as I prepared to test the RV systems before hitting the road, a police cruiser pulled up in front of my house. And the officer stepped out holding a notice. One with Celeste's name written across the top. She wasn't done. Not even close. The police cruiser stopped in front of my house slowly, almost cautiously. Lights off, engine humming quietly. Ranger stood beside me in the driveway, ears lifted, gaze fixed. He wasn't aggressive, just alert, sensing the shift in the air long before I did. The door opened, and Officer Mendoza stepped out. I knew him in passing. Good man, late 30s, calm, steady. He walked toward me with a clipboard tucked under his arm. Afternoon, Mr. Fletcher. Officer, I said. Everything all right? He glanced at Ranger, then back at me. Nothing you're in trouble for. But I do need to talk to you. He handed me the paper. A civil harassment complaint. Filed by Celeste and Darian. For a moment, the world around me blurred. The street, the grass, the soft rustle of wind in the oak tree by my driveway. Everything narrowed into a single, absurd thought. They can't possibly be serious. I skimmed the document. Claims, emotional cruelty, wrongful eviction, theft of marital property, public humiliation, negligence leading to financial hardship. I exhaled slowly, rubbing my forehead. Part of me had expected something. But this was desperation twisted into paperwork. Officer Mendoza shifted uncomfortably. Look, between you and me, the complaint doesn't hold much weight. They're saying you evicted them without notice. But you owned the house. They weren't tenants. Legally, it's thin ice at best. At best, I asked dryly. At best, he repeated. Ranger pressed closer to my leg, sensing my rising tension. I folded the paper and held it out. Do I need to sign anything? No, sir. Just acknowledging you've been notified is enough. There'll be a mediation hearing scheduled in about 2 weeks. Mostly procedural. I nodded. He hesitated before stepping back. For what it's worth, Fletcher. Everyone in town knows what happened. You didn't do anything wrong. That gave me a small measure of comfort, though the knot in my stomach didn't dissolve. Thanks, officer. He tipped his hat, got into the cruiser, and drove off, leaving me standing in the driveway with Ranger leaning against my leg as if holding me steady. I looked down at him. Well, boy, looks like they're not done. He whined softly and nudged my hand. I returned inside, set the notice on the kitchen table, and poured myself a glass of cold water. My hand trembled slightly as I lifted it, not from fear, from disbelief. Celeste had gone from manipulation to threats to lawsuits, and now to fabricating accusations for legal intimidation. A few years ago, I might have folded, apologized, begged, tried to repair the relationship no matter how toxic it had become. But not anymore. Ranger curled at my feet while I read the complaint more thoroughly. My eyes caught a line near the bottom. They claim you sold the house in retaliation and caused them emotional trauma by forcing homelessness. Force. Homelessness. Retaliation. The irony nearly made me laugh. They forgot to mention the part where they threatened to sell my home to put me in a facility I never needed. My phone buzzed. A message from a number I didn't recognize, though I didn't need to. You think you won? You haven't seen anything yet. See, I set the phone down. not with anger, with clarity. Their actions weren't about justice or fairness. They were about losing control and trying to claw it back. The next week passed slowly, filled with RV preparations and long walks with Ranger. Every night, I slept with one ear open, listening for anything unusual. Celeste and Darian were unpredictable now, cornered animals. On Wednesday morning, I received a call from my attorney, a man named Prescott whom I'd hired briefly during the house sale. I reviewed the complaint, he said. It's weak, very weak. They have no standing and no evidence. It's performative. Performative, he chuckled softly. A dramatic tantrum wrapped in legal stationery. That sounded exactly like them. I'll handle the hearing, he continued. You don't even need to speak. Just show up. I appreciate it, I said. You're doing fine, Fletcher. I've seen cases like this. There's no real danger, just noise. Noise, yes. But noise can still rattle a man if played long enough. When I hung up, Ranger watched me from the living room rug, tail tapping lightly against the floor. You ready for a ride? I asked. He bolted to his feet. We drove out toward Crystal Ridge, where the hiking trail wound along a narrow river. Ranger trotted ahead, sniffing the air, chasing the occasional butterfly. I followed slowly, letting my mind unwind. Halfway across the bridge, I stopped and leaned against the railing. The water below rushed in shimmering currents. Clear, alive, unbothered by anything happening on the surface. I closed my eyes. Just breathe. Just exist. The wind brushed against my face, cool and honest. When I opened my eyes, Ranger sat quietly at my feet, head tilted, watching me. You're good for me, I said. He leaned into my leg. That night, I slept deeper than I expected. Heavy, dreamless sleep that washed weeks of tension from my bones. Until Saturday morning. Because that's when I discovered what Celeste had done next. And this time it wasn't just legal. It was personal, public, and intentionally designed to cause maximum humiliation. A kind of attack I never thought my own daughter would resort to. Saturday morning began quietly, almost too quietly. The kind of quiet that feels staged, like the world is holding its breath. Ranger woke me with a soft nudge of his nose, tail thumping against the bedroom door. We had fallen into a routine. I'd brew coffee, he'd sit by the window waiting for squirrels that never came, and together we'd start the day slow. But the moment I stepped into the hallway, something felt off. Not wrong exactly, just different. Like a storm that hadn't yet appeared but was preparing its entrance. I pulled on a sweater, slipped into my boots, and opened the front door to retrieve the newspaper. That's when I saw it. A giant, glossy poster, almost the size of my garage door, slapped across the white paint with strips of industrial tape. My face, my full name, and beneath it, bold red letters. Elder abuser beware. Abandoned his own daughter. Stole her home. Left her homeless. My stomach dropped. The world tilted. Cold air punched into my lungs. I took 3 slow steps toward the poster, eyes narrowing on every detail. They used a photo from 5 years ago, the one Celeste had posted online on Father's Day. Me smiling at a barbecue, holding a plate of ribs, looking like the kind of man incapable of harming anyone. The cruel brilliance of it stung like ice. It wasn't just a lie. It was a weapon designed to hit me where I lived, in the respect and quiet reputation I'd built over decades. Ranger barked once, sharply, pacing in circles before sitting beside me, ears pinned back. My hands trembled as I reached up and pulled at the corner of the poster. Came off with a violent rip, the sound echoing across the driveway. Whoever printed it had spent real money on this. Not a cheap paper sign. A professional print. Weather-resistant. Vibrant ink. Deliberate. I folded it once, twice, 3 times before shoving it under my arm. Then I noticed something even worse. 2 neighbors, Mrs. Harland and Mr. Carter, standing at the end of the sidewalk watching silently. Awkward. Uncertain. Uncomfortable. Morning, I said, forcing calm into my voice. Mrs. Harland offered a hesitant wave. We didn't know what to It wasn't us, Fletcher. I know, I said. Mr. Carter cleared his throat. Saw a car pull up at maybe 4:30 this morning. Black sedan. Someone got out and taped that up. Didn't see their face. Of course he didn't. Celeste wasn't bold enough to confront me directly anymore. But she was bold enough to destroy me publicly. I thanked them and went inside, Ranger following closely. I placed the poster on the kitchen table and leaned both hands on the counter, breathing deeply through the surge of humiliation and anger. I wasn't a saint, but I sure as hell wasn't what that sign claimed. I took a photo of the poster and sent it to my attorney, Prescott, with a simple message. This went too far. He replied within minutes. Removing it was the right move. Keep it. This is defamation. Document everything. I'll handle the rest. I sank into a chair. Ranger pressed his head against my thigh, sensing the weight of the moment. Good boy, I murmured. We'll get through this. After 20 minutes of silence, I stood up, folded the poster into a trash bag, and tied it shut. Then I drove straight to the police station. Officer Mendoza was there, and when he saw the poster, his eyebrows shot up. Wow, okay. They really crossed a line with this. This is harassment, I said. Clear as day. He nodded. And illegal. We'll file it. I'll add this to your complaint response. He took photos, logged evidence, and wrote a formal report. His professionalism soothed some of my anxiety. But once I stepped outside the station, the reality dawned on me. Celeste had escalated beyond tantrums, beyond entitlement, beyond desperation. She wanted to annihilate my reputation, whatever the cost. And she didn't care who else got hurt along the way. For 2 days, the town buzzed with whispers. People stared a little longer. Conversations hushed when I walked by. Some offered sympathy. Others avoided eye contact entirely. But through it all, Ranger stayed glued to my side, silent, loyal, steady. On Monday, Prescott called. We're filing a countercomplaint for harassment, defamation, and malicious intent, he said. This is no longer a family dispute. This is targeted character damage. Good, I replied quietly. It won't undo what they did, he added. But it will stop them from going further. I wanted to believe him, but Tuesday shattered that hope. It happened during a routine grocery run. Ranger sat in the passenger seat while I loaded bags into the RV for our upcoming trip. A woman approached me tentatively, mid-40s, looking uncomfortable. Are you Fletcher? Yes, I said. She swallowed. I'm sorry, but I saw the post on Facebook. Your daughter said you kicked her out on the street. That she's been living in her car. I froze. Excuse me? She winced, as if realizing how cruel the words sounded. It's been shared all over. Hundreds of comments. My heartbeat quickened. Heat crawled up my neck. Not anger, something heavier. Betrayal layered with disbelief. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. I walked back to the RV, climbed inside, and opened my phone. Notifications exploded across the screen. Celeste. Public post a dramatic photo of her sitting on a curb, head down, mascara streaked. Caption. My father abandoned me. Don't trust the people who smile in public but destroy you in private. Thousands of likes. Dozens of shares. A tidal wave of sympathy pouring toward the wrong side. I felt something cold settle inside me. She hadn't just lost control. She hadn't just snapped. She had declared war. And this time, it wasn't my reputation at stake. It was my future, my freedom, my chance to live in peace. I ran my hand over Ranger's head. He stared up at me, waiting, trusting, unshaken. Okay, boy, I whispered. If it's war she wants. I folded the phone shut. She's going to get the truth. All of it. Because I wasn't about to let lies define the rest of my life. Not when I finally had something worth protecting. For hours after seeing Celeste's staged homeless photo, I sat silently inside the RV with Ranger curled against my leg. The storm of lies she unleashed online gathered momentum with every passing minute. More shares, more comments, more strangers condemning me without knowing a single truth. It wasn't just a smear campaign anymore. It was a rewriting of history in real time, and I wasn't going to let it stand. I took a deep breath, pulled out my laptop, and opened a blank document. Ranger lifted his head, watching as if he sensed I was about to do something irreversible. I typed, not with anger, not with vengeance, with clarity. I wrote about how I bought the house for Celeste and Darian, how I paid every bill, how they banned me from their wedding, how they threatened to put me in a care facility and sell my own home, how they mocked me, ignored me, drained me. I included dates, documents, screenshots of Celeste's messages, copies of the deeds, everything factual and provable. And I ended with a simple line. This is the truth. Believe it or don't. But I won't be silent while lies replace my life story. I hit post. I didn't tag anyone, didn't name call, didn't embellish. I simply told the truth and attached the evidence. By the time I finished dinner, my notifications hadn't just grown. They'd exploded. Hundreds of comments, thousands of shares, people from the town, from nearby cities, even from across the country. Some apologizing, some shocked, many furious at Celeste. For the first time in this entire nightmare, the tide turned. But the turning point wasn't online. It happened the next morning. I took Ranger on his usual walk, breathing in the crisp air, when a car pulled up beside me. I tensed, almost ready for another ambush. But instead of confrontation, a woman stepped out with a microphone, followed by a cameraman. "Mr. Fletcher?" she asked. "I'm with the Cedar Falls Community News. We'd like to interview you. Your post has the whole town talking." I hesitated. "I'm not interested in drama." She nodded respectfully. "Then let us help clear it. Your story deserves to be heard accurately. We won't sensationalize anything." Her sincerity disarmed me. I agreed. We sat on a park bench while Ranger lounged at my feet. The camera recorded as I spoke calmly, honestly, with none of the bitterness people might have expected. I told them only what mattered. How giving and forgiving had cost me. How enabling had harmed everyone involved. How boundaries were not cruelty, but survival. How no one, no matter how old, deserves to be manipulated into silence. The interview aired that night. Within minutes, my phone buzzed with message after message. Support from strangers, apologies from neighbors, and even a few people admitting my honesty helped them confront their own toxic family dynamics. It wasn't vindication I felt. It was relief. A quiet, gentle relief that settled somewhere deep in my chest. But I knew the storm wasn't over. Because the next day, Celeste showed up at my house. I was in the living room packing final supplies into the RV when I heard the furious pounding on the door. Ranger rushed forward, growling low. I put a hand on his back to calm him, then opened the door just enough to stand in the frame. Celeste stood there. Hair a mess, eyes red, cheeks streaked with tears and mascara. She looked like a woman who had spent the entire night reading comments she never believed she'd see. "How could you?" she gasped. "How could you humiliate me publicly like that?" I stared at her, stunned by the audacity. "You put a poster on my garage," I said quietly. "You lied about being homeless. You defamed me in front of the entire town." "That's different," she shrieked. "How?" "Because I'm your daughter." She pounded her fist against her chest. "You were supposed to protect me, not expose me." Her words echoed down the street. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me so Ranger wouldn't charge forward. "Celeste," I said gently but firmly, "I protected you your entire life. I paid for your home. I paid for your debts. I defended you when you didn't deserve it. I forgave you every time you crossed a line." She stilled, breathing hard. "But you went after my dignity, my reputation, my peace. And you expected me to stay quiet because you share my blood." Her eyes gleamed with anger and fear. "I didn't think you'd fight back." "That's the problem," I said. "You never thought I would. You counted on it." She opened her mouth to argue, but then her face shifted. Something inside her cracked. Her shoulders sagged. Her hands trembled. "Dad?" she whispered. "I messed up. It was the closest thing to an apology I had heard from her in years. But it wasn't enough. Not anymore. I know you did, I said softly. And I hope someday you fix that. For yourself. She stepped forward. Can't we talk? Work things out? Start over. I shook my head slowly. I'm starting over, Celeste. But not with you. Not right now. She blinked rapidly, stunned. You're choosing a dog and a trailer over your own daughter? No, I said, feeling my voice steady. I'm choosing peace. And Ranger is part of that peace. Her lips trembled. So that's it. That's it, I said. For now. She backed away, tears spilling over. You'll regret this, she whispered. No, I said gently. For once in my life I won't. She turned and walked down the driveway, shoulders shaking. I waited until she reached her car, then stepped inside and locked the door. Not out of fear, but finality. Ranger came to my side, nudging my hand, as if asking, Is it over? I knelt beside him. Yes, I whispered. It's finally over. 2 weeks later, Ranger and I hit the road. The airstream glided behind us like a silver promise. We traveled through mountains, lakes, forests, small towns, open highways. People waved. Some recognized me from the interview and wished me well. At night, I'd sit by the fire with Ranger's head on my lap, watching the stars I had once ignored. The grief softened. The betrayal stopped echoing. The world felt wide and welcoming again. One evening, somewhere along the Colorado border, I looked at Ranger and said, We found our life, boy. A real one. His tail thumped once. And for the first time in decades, I felt free. Not alone. Not indebted. Not drowned by obligation. Just free.